Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name's Jami Duffy, and I am the Executive Director of a youth-serving music organization here in Denver, Colorado.
Laura?
Hello. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Laura Clark. I'm the Director of Programs for the House of Blues Music Forward Foundation. We are a nonprofit organization that serves students nationwide that are interested in careers in the music industry, both on stage and off stage.
Fantastic. And Kelsey?
Hello. So it looks like I'm displayed as Frank Heuser, but I'm Kelsey. And I am the programs director at another music education nonprofit called Young Musicians Foundation, located in Los Angeles.
And I'm Frank Heuser. I'm the director of the music education program at UCLA. And we are not a nonprofit, but we are a nonprofit, especially right now. So what can I say? I want to start this off. Everyone's wondering, what is this whole situation doing to music teachers and music education? Well, at least for our traditional teachers who've been through a formal music education program and are in schools, this, let's see, where is this, is what we are seeing right now. It's a 30-second video. You know, being an academic, I usually have 50 slides to present in 10 minutes, but I have just one slide, and this is it. And like I say, it's got a 30-second video, and this young lady really gives the feelings of most music educators.
Hey, so as some of you guys might know, I'm a music teacher, and I found that one of the best ways that I can process the whole transition to online learning and teaching is to write a song. So I wrote a song. I'd like to share that with you guys now. Here we go.
So that kind of says it all for most of my former students, my current students who are trying to complete student teaching, and all the kids they're trying to work with. And part of that scream is a result of our inability in formal music education to prepare people to teach in alternative ways. And that's why I'm excited to work with people from nonprofits. And I'm glad I'm meeting new people. And my former student, Kelsey, who has spent 4 years in actually elementary school, she's now working for a nonprofit and coming up with some really genius ideas that I need to learn from. So how do we partner? How does informal education partner with people who are in a different part of the educational venue? Does anybody want to pick it up? Okay, Jami.
Hi. Yeah, I think we can all relate to that scream. So at Youth on Record, our model that we started with is serving us really well right now. What we know about Denver and what we know about Colorado is, the good news is we have a host of musicians who are excellent at their craft. And they're great musicians, they're touring, they're releasing incredible music. We couldn't be prouder of the local music scene in Denver. So what we did 10 years ago and have been doing since is we trained professional local musicians to teach 4-credit high school classes and middle school classes in what would be considered, I think, non-traditional music education. So what has served us really well is getting a group of artists trained and ready to teach in the classroom. And we're really committed to this idea of a trauma-informed approach to music education, especially given the demographics that we work with, which are primarily students of color and minoritized and marginalized students. So how can we work together? Well, one thing that Youth on Record started doing before coronavirus, which we will double down on, you know, when we all kind of get back into the classroom, is training. So one thing we can offer as a nonprofit organization is training traditional music educators in some of the tools and techniques that we use in the classroom as musicians. So taking that trauma-informed approach, culturally relevant and responsive teaching techniques. And then we can do some training around the music industry, music business, and what the kind of music infrastructure is nationally. So we can definitely partner in ways in terms of sharing best practices right now, sharing technology, sharing different teaching tools and techniques, and I think just really building strong relationships between the music community and traditional music educators. Because where education is going when we all get back is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen, given the academic loss that we're seeing. So that's one suggestion right now is partnering local musicians with music education to share in best practices and new and innovative approaches when we get back into physical classrooms.
I will have a question to ask you as we get through everybody, but we'll go on for Laura.
Yeah, so this is really quite interesting, isn't it? We're pivoting so quickly, and Music Forward, we have a physical presence in 4 major cities across the country, and we've done most of our programming direct service, whether it be artist development or career development. And so in this span of a month that feels like a century, we've really been listening and working closely with our partners, and to Jami's point, working with our educators, but starting at the administrative levels and the state level, particularly in the state of California. We've been fortunate to have a relationship with the CTE and Arts Media Entertainment strain, and so getting on weekly calls and having the opportunity to hear what the challenges are from the educator side, and then industry and community partners understanding what those needs are, and creating really creative and collaborative approaches to serving young people. And so when I hear teachers saying, one of the things, particularly in music, is the inability to perform. So now we have an opportunity to say, well, in this break, let's look at some of the other aspects of music. So going back to music business and talking about EPKs and artist bios and understanding live production. And again, recognizing that we primarily work with middle school and high school students in the K-12 space. And so giving them a little bit of out-of-the-box opportunity, as well as offering creative workshops. We've done a series of songwriting workshops for young creatives, and bringing in industry professionals and giving the young people the opportunity to interact with them digitally, of course, it is really important. But what we also recognize is that we're missing huge amounts of young people, particularly from our target demographic, those underrepresented and underserved youth, because they don't have the technology, or they don't have access to Wi-Fi, or it's not a priority, given what's going on, for them to log in and have these enrichment opportunities. So being creative and developing programs that speak to the young person and meet them where they are, and making it straightforward, not a heavy lift. It can just be a conversation with the industry at this point that can help to fill that gap, or to support the creative process with those young people during this period is really, I think, important. And just connecting, we're creating meetup spaces for young creatives on a weekly basis, so they can all just get together and talk about what they're doing creatively and what they're experiencing locally. And I think that is, in the short term, a really important step to ensuring community in this space.
Great, thank you. And then Kelsey.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what you both shared it's great to hear that that's happening, in other parts and with other organizations. I think one thing that we've seen at YMF, Young Musicians Foundation, is, in an interesting way, it's kind of reinvigorated a lot of the feeling of community between our organizations. So, the number of calls that I've been on about ways that we can continue to reach our students and all of the constituents and all of the people who previously benefited from this in-person type of programming. It's been really reassuring. It's certainly been challenging, but before COVID, before school shut down, our organization was serving primarily elementary and middle school students. We were seeing about 4,800 students on a weekly basis. We had 27 school and site partners. The focus of our organization was to meet the very wide gap in access to arts education that for some reason seems to exist so presently in Los Angeles and seems to inordinately impact those students who are the most at risk and the least resourced. So one of the main concerns our organization had was we worried from an arts advocacy perspective that this was going to be a major step back in the inclusion of the arts, because it presents the opportunity for only essential programming. And of course, we all know that the arts now at this moment in time are more essential than ever, perhaps for student engagement, for that connection, for that creative outlet. So I think one of the things that organizations and nonprofits and schools can offer in this moment is just agility and innovation. Our organization pivoted very quickly. On March 13th, we had a notification that essentially there was going to be a 2-week pause on programming. Here we are later, well past that 2-week mark, and we're hearing talks about fall potentially being an extension of this. So on Monday, March 16th, we launched an online music academy. And for us, it offered the opportunity to stay connected with students, to offer a seamless transition to an online learning module, which most of our schools were going to need to adapt to anyway. And it offered a continued income opportunity for the teaching artists that our organization employs. And I've seen so many other nonprofits and organizations doing similar work. And the umbrella of that is just this overarching advocacy piece for arts education moving forward, no matter what comes about. So that's all it's great to hear this, and it's great to just hear other organizations doing the same work.
So, and the elephant in the room are major universities, particularly the UC system, which has resisted online education for quite a while. And most of my colleagues at the UC can't wait until we can get back to just teaching in person. But back on that slide, this is the new normal right now. It's never going to return. And I'm thinking that this is a real possible time for us to begin to blend some of our in-person and online work. I see no reason to bring all of our student teachers to campus anymore, ever. Well, maybe once or twice. And we're getting a lot done there. We're trying to figure out how to get credentials to these people. And this is a nationwide discussion amongst people who are in the music education, teacher education business. I was on a meeting last Monday night with colleagues pretty much on the East Coast. And it was just fascinating. When I mentioned partnering with nonprofits, there was not a lot of interest in this. And traditionally, there's been a lot of hesitance on parts of both types of organizations to really get together and see what we could do together. So I'm really hoping this is a real chance for this to happen. Okay, and I know that there's been many things that Kelsey's offered that she'd love to have my students come to. Well, their organization meets, it's really just a 20-minute drive on a good day, like right now, but it's almost a 2-hour drive on any normal weekday morning. And now we're getting comfortable with using this Skype thing or this Zoom thing to bring our students into other places. So maybe there's a way we could begin to explore this, and maybe we could form a coalition here of people who are willing to take this risk of using the technology to extend what we consider to be education and teacher preparation and professional development. Okay, anybody else want to?
One thought about that, and Youth on Record, first and foremost, is a social justice organization. So we have chosen music as our vehicle, but ultimately what we are hoping to achieve with our young people is their personal liberation and their liberation of their communities. And so the majority of our students that we serve are students of color, and in the school districts that we serve, the majority of students are students of color. And we find that the majority of educators are not people of color. And that is, highly increased when we talk about music educators. And so for years and years and years, I've been trying to have conversations with universities about credentials. Because what we're finding is the local musicians who work for Youth on Record, right now we've got 22 musicians, local artists, majority artists of color, artists from minoritized and marginalized backgrounds who are teaching in the schools. But they are not credentialed teachers. We always have a teacher of record there. And they are not music educators. And whenever I'm talking to universities, we need to talk about, this is an opportunity for us to talk about the social justice issue of the lack of representation of Black and Brown people in traditional music education at universities. So if we're going to start to talk about credentials, and we're going to start to talk about how do we get representation and folks from the community to be these educators, and have the universities recognize them and see them for their value, these folks who have worked in the industry for 20 years, who have gained immense community trust, I wonder if this isn't an opportunity for music educators who are, or organizations like Youth on Record, who are employing teaching artists and partner artists, who are from the community, from the same cultural identities as the community, who would not be able to achieve the sort of credentials that you would need to be a traditional music educator. How can we start having that conversation right now? It's a conversation we've avoided. It's a conversation that makes people nervous. But it's a conversation that Youth on Record is so excited about having and has been trying to have for years.
I think that's a great point, Jami. And I do know, again, in some of the conversations that I've been having, particularly within the state of California and their CTE programs, is how to credential industry professionals that are transitioning from the industry to become educators, and they're not going to go back to school and get a master's degree to teach. And so there is conversation happening at a high level around this, and trying to identify what are the hoops and what are the benchmarks that will need to be achieved in order for these industry leaders to be recognized as educators. And so ideally, as that is tested and there's resource behind that, then we'll see it expand into other districts. And ultimately, although I'm being quite optimistic when I say K-12 to post-secondary will sort of take on this initiative in a seamless way. But I think that it's being recognized, and there's an understanding that the unique added value that these professionals bring, that when they're being required to get certification, we're losing people that could really provide a lot of insight and resource and experience that these children need in order to be able to move into the workforce in a robust and meaningful way.
Well, and one question there too is, since we're in this sort of great pause, what I know from the music industry is that every musician that I know whose skill set is only in arts and culture is unemployed. And they will be unemployed for the next 2 to 3 years. But if we can start to pivot and have models like all of our models, where we are training musicians and artists to have a skill set that that in addition to their art serves the community. So let's say education is one of those areas. This might be a really interesting pause where they might actually have a little bit more time to be incentivized for sort of a fast track certification program where there's maybe some education funding that goes to them. We see all the artists who want that. We get them on their own special track, just throwing ideas out there.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. It's really inspiring to hear, again, just other organizations talking about this work, because like both of your organizations, we have a number of teaching artists, we call them, because it's the designation, the difference between that non-credentialed staff member who are fabulous teachers. And when we do our programmatic evaluations, those classroom teachers that get to watch their students interact with the teaching artists acknowledge the benefit and the value and the impact of students. Laura, I imagine working with the CTE, the Career Technical kind of pathways model. I know our organization has looked into that as a pathway for teachers to get that kind of interim, you know, it's not that longer term single subject credential, but it is a way for them to be in the classroom interacting with students. And so that feels like a really exciting opportunity for the arts, because and for all disciplines of the arts and all of these kind of career focused pathways, because it capitalizes on those individuals' pre-existing knowledge sets, which are sometimes so far beyond, you know, what a single subject, myself included as a former single subject full-time music educator, might bring into the classroom. But it also allows them to teach, and to teach with an eye towards a career in the arts. And, you know, it's worth mentioning that it's staggering that in California, where we have so many career opportunities in the arts, it seems like, you know, we, relative to other states, I think we're like 41st in funding in terms of allocation of arts. And I'll correct myself and actually look that up in a bit. But, you know, the cents to the dollar that we put into the arts for a state that has such a thriving arts economy, this feels like a very exciting opportunity. And one of the things that our organization is trying to do to just continue that conversation is just to continue presenting the impact of the programs and keep getting all of the parents' feedback, the guardians' feedback, administrator feedback, teachers' feedback, so that everyone sees over and over again the value of it, because it is so valuable.
Let me bridge to another question that's in the chat bar. I mean, we're talking on the teacher side of the equation and the programming side of the equation, and maybe not on the students and parent side of the equation, but are younger students functioning well in this distributed environment for learning? Kelsey's shaking her head. And is there anything that they're maybe more comfortable with screens than we're talking sort of the teacher's perspective and the accreditation perspective, but, you know, is it that there is a gap there or a challenge there that is part of the build?
I think part of the issue will be the way that the teachers can use the screens to engage the students. So the kids may be comfortable with screens, but not in the level or the kind of understanding the teachers may not have with this. We're seeing most of our online education at UCLA be the professor standing in front of the screen and delivering for 3 hours. It drives my students nuts. I'm doing almost all asynchronous teaching. I'm not sure how successful it is, but the students are appreciating it. They're doing their work. They're coming up with ideas for creative projects. So I think faculty and schools have to learn how to use this technology in real teaching, you know, for the purpose of what is learning. And it's a real opportunity to ask pretty deep questions on the cognitive level of what is music learning? What consists music learning? Is it just moving little apps around on the screen and getting different sounds? Or what kind of cognitive change and new mental models might emerge from this? So.
Yeah, I can't stress enough. Well, there's a couple challenges here. One of the challenges that we have in our school districts is if you take a community that's experienced more privilege, they have more devices in the home. And so if they have multiple children, they can do their classes live. Our classes are not live. So our classes have to be pre-recorded with a lesson. You know, students are engaging that way. They log in at a certain time because the assumption is there's multiple kids in the home. There's only one device at best. And so they have to be able to log in when they can. I think the biggest challenge there, at least for us, is this. When we're working in school districts that have high dropout rates and high late completion rates, keeping older students engaged and giving them a reason to go back to school is challenging enough. Now they're out of school for a long time. The economy's trashed for years. Universities aren't going to go back except for online, if at all. And so that through line they maybe had, which like maybe I'll get a good job after this. Maybe I'll go to university after this. Maybe there's something for me after this. They're not seeing it. So what we're worried about is that students aren't going to re-enroll in the fall, that the sophomores and the juniors are going to drop out. So our tactic for that is a combination of in-school time programming, but then offering out-of-school time programming. So Youth on Record offers virtual out-of-school time programming 5 days a week in a sort of cohort model. Because if we can get young people to build community, if we can get them to show up for each other, if we can get them to create these kind of safe networks of teenage peers, that is their through line, that's what's going to bring them back more than anything we can teach them right now. They are in a time period in their life where the most important thing in their life is their peer network, is those social connections. So if we can create these kind of smaller hubs where they come in the after school time and they build community there. We do that through our Fempowered program, which is a program for young women who learn from young women. But I think creating those networks is important. So I would encourage, I think the schools have to be looking at what is our online teaching, but who are we partnering with that's teaching out of school time and offering kind of a club-like model that's not for a grade, but really is for to get young people out of social isolation, out of what they might be experiencing as a traditional sort of like traumatic experience, and just a place that's all theirs. How do we create a sacred space for young people online? Because that's what's going to get them to come back. And that's what's going to, I think, fill their hearts and their souls right now. So we're offering a combination of both.
Yeah, if I may, and I know I come at this from a slightly different perspective because we focus on career opportunity within the music industry. I think creating, whether it's in school or out of school, creating content and curriculum that is relevant and allows a young person, particularly a young person who doesn't have necessarily models for career pathway, to understand that there is opportunity in a creative space. I mean, I think one of the most appealing things about the music industry is that there isn't a straight line to an opportunity, and a level of social perceptiveness and a level of self-understanding would allows you to pivot and be creative. And okay, if this is going away, if live performance is going away in the short term, where's my opportunity in that? And we're already seeing these amazing streaming opportunities and digital communities being built by young people. So they're creating community in this space already, probably at a pace that far exceeds what we're doing as adults who are trying to lead them. But I think there has to be a relevancy to whatever it is that they're learning, that they understand if I'm doing these things, it's helping me to build my toolkit that's going to get me to the place that I want to go. And if that place doesn't exist, I have the ability to make it realize that. So I try very much to recognize the reality of where we are, but also this disruption is creating new opportunity. And who are we to say that the old normal was the best way to approach creativity and music? And so that's, I think, just critical, and why we constantly are engaging the industry. And I think it's why schools are interested in working with us, because we're bridging, right? We're bridging the educational space with the industry space. So there's a relevancy to it, and there's a direct line to understanding, what do I need to do? What are my next steps? Where is opportunity? And what are the trends that are coming that I can fill that space, because I understand my position in this insane landscape that we're sitting in.
So we are now at the end of our allotted time, and this has been a fabulous conversation. I've been enjoying being on the fly on the wall for this, and I hope this continues to bridge. How would you like people to reach out to you, and what would you like people to connect with you for? You can say it as well as put it in the chat. We'll move that over to the Slack conversation too. So Jami, how would you like people? Yeah, go ahead.
People are welcome to email me if they'd like, or reach out to me on social media. And then Laura and Kelsey, I'd love to keep talking to the two of you, because Laura, we have a career pathway program as well. So would love to talk to you about some of the stuff we're doing with podcasting and podcast scoring and like those kind of relevant jobs that we're going to need. So I'd love to connect with you and Frank as well. But yeah, just email me. Jami@youthonrecord.org.
Anything that Kelsey or Laura need? What would you like us to reach out to you on?
Well, we are running every day of the week. We have online programming, whether it's artist development, career development. We do a spotlight with artists. So you have to work hard to not find us on social media at HOB Music Forward. And I also drop my email in the chat as well. Just get connected. Sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get a weekly. We don't bombard you. We don't share your contact information, but you'll get weekly updates on what's happening in the digital space and beyond. Because we're going to get beyond this at some point, and so whatever that looks like.
Great, yeah, and for me, email works as well. I'll definitely drop that in the chat. You can also find us on social, Young Musicians Foundation. And yeah, I would love to stay connected, Jami and Laura, and anyone else who, I think that, as Laura, you were kind of alluding to, I think there are some interesting opportunities here for education and for the world. There's certainly a lot of challenges, but I do think that there's an interesting opportunity, and staying connected and sharing out those practices is a great way to just move us forward. So please feel free to reach out.
So there's a question on online latency in teaching, which is probably another 15-minute conversation that we could have, which I'll let that move into the chat or into Slack or other conversations. I know Frank was about to say something, but I'm going to put a provocation out, which is I've met so many phenomenal, like you guys, youth education programs in music, and y'all don't seem to know each other. And so there's another probably 15 I know of that are not on this call that I don't think that, is there a missing, I know there's definitely one on the school side education, but is there a missing fabric or thread between organizations who are doing the great work in the world like you guys are doing?
I was just going to suggest we're starting a series of university level music educators. It would be really amazing to have a dialogue with the people from nonprofits and those people. And I'm going to suggest that. And we'll be back in touch about that.